Akora. I present to you from Accra, Ghana, the Seprewa. Well, that is to say, whether you are in Mali or Liberia or in Accra, Ghana, we are Africans.
Communities. So we are saying that we don't want to have be inspired by Stories of Africa, but be inspired with Stories of Africa, where you are not just passing by in the stories, but you are joining in the story creation.
Africa. We're doing everything about Africa and using storytelling to push narratives about Africa and also using a platform. So if you have a story, you don't put it on any platform, nobody's going to know about it. So in the Western world, they've done lots and lots of movies about their countries, and we have believed it over the years. Other plenty movies that I could mention. Talk of the recent one, the Black Panther, they try even to tell a story about African bravery. We've seen Olympus Has Fallen, other movies over time, and we have believed it. They have used their platform. So in this regard, an ambassador, you're going to use BISA as a platform and also social media to push narratives, to change the narratives we already know about.
As an African, have you ever traveled abroad? What did you hear about Africa? Let me tell you a story. And this happened last night, literally last night. It's BISA. BISA with the time. BISA. It's BISA. It's BISA. It's BISA. BISA with the time. It's BISA. It's BISA. Africa, gone is tomorrow. Today is here. Achievement to be accomplished. Nothing to fear. It's BISA.
It's no surprise that the title for this event is Driving Positive Narratives, because being inspired by Stories from Africa believes that the power to reshape these narratives lies with those who believe them. So one thing you can look forward to is an enriching and empowering session. I want to give some things we can look forward to or anticipate by the end of this event. That is, ambassadors will have a comprehensive understanding of be inspired by stories from Africa's objectives and their roles in achieving them. Also, they will be enhanced with a capacity in storytelling, community engagement, and advocacy. We'll also have the formation of strong connections and network, very important, and foster collaborations of future Be Inspired by Stories Africa projects. There will also be the generation of creative ideas to improve Be Inspired by Stories from Africa's content and outreach efforts. So trust me, this is going to be an exciting session, very interesting and inspiring. More so because we have some powerful and seasoned speakers who we would be hearing from today. So quickly, I want us to drop in the chat session where you are joining from. Feel free to add your name and location. Where are you joining from? Let us know. I can see Bubakar from Mali. I hope I got your name right. I can see Adanje Dickens from Kenya. Kindly pardon me with the pronunciation of names. I can see Rispa from Nairobi, Kenya. Okay, I can see Ruby from Ghana. Let's keep it coming. Priscilla from Ghana. Let's keep it coming. And as we drop our names, let's take note of this Zoom keeping rules. Kindly mute when you are not speaking. Kindly mute when you're not speaking. And if at any point in time you need any support, reach out to us in the chat session. Just reach out to us in the chat session. And lastly, don't forget to put on your beautiful smile throughout this event. Great. I can see Priscilla from Ghana, Kampala from Uganda, Prosper from Ghana, Gamal from Egypt, Eric from Uganda. Awesome, 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 awesome. Thank you all so much for joining. You're definitely going to enjoy every session of this event. So we will be kicking off things right about now. And I would like you to join me to invite Betty Osei-Botu, the lady doing amazing. She is the founder of the Be Inspired with Stories from Africa, and the Green Africa Youth Organization, Uganda. She will be providing us with an overview of Be Inspired by Stories from Africa and introduce our new ambassadors. So help me welcome Betty. Betty, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Shaira. Beautiful moderation. It's a pleasure to see everyone here today and see how people are joining from all over Africa. I've been very, very happy to have this particular program kickstart, and I'm very happy that finally we have this going on. So now, to everyone joining us today, I want you to join me and imagine the story. In the year 2022, my first trip to the United Kingdom, I landed in Glasgow. I went for the Conference of Parties. I sat there, and amongst myself, I had fellow Africans with me. They were all from different countries. And all we could talk about were the problems of Africa. This one mentioned poor infrastructures. The other one mentioned social interventions are horrible. The other one says people are just keep on exploiting us. The other one says the complaints just kept on erupting. Then I asked myself, why didn't I hear any positive narrative? Why do we keep on amplifying problems rather than recommending solutions? And none of them spoke about this. I took the next flight and I landed in Ghana. And when I got back to Ghana, I sat down with an entire cardboard and I started drafting. I said, why is this a problem? Why are our mentalities skewed towards only negative narrative? How do we shift the mentality to positive narrative? Then I started. And through that brainstorming, I was able to arrive at Be Inspired with Stories from Africa, a platform for communities to tell their stories. Let us have that balance between positive narrative and negative narratives. Let's have that balance between identifying problem and recommending solutions. Let's have that positive balance with the narrative that we ourselves as Africans we tell. And through this, it has been in existence for the past 2 years now. And we've been able to do several projects in our capacities, from connecting to communities, through the stories we tell, through going into the communities itself, carrying out outreaches, to youth and storytelling, empowering young people to be the enablers of positive narrative. And even that with this particular program that we are running. How do we empower the next generation to see Africa from a different point of view, to see Africa as a place where we grow, we nurture ourselves, and there's a lot of inspiration to come, where we shift from that narrative of vulnerability to resilience. How resilient have we been? I know we have this past historical experience of slave trade, but how have we stood on that past narrative to build a resilient future? And those are the kind of stories we tell. And then consultation, people are now inviting us to teach them how we are able to use storytelling to create advocacy impact, how to use storytelling to create impact in communities. We've been invited to several programs to do this. And through all this engagement for the past 2 years now, we've been able to cover more than 100 stories, both in the form of videos, in the form of blogs. We've gotten more than 10,000 subscribers on all our platforms, and we look forward to amplifying and increasing that. We've also had more than 15 African countries covered through our stories, both in blogs and videos. We've also empowered several young people and are currently training journalists in terms of storytelling. And we are looking forward to add the ambassadors to this whilst we amplify African stories to inspire change. And therefore, it's with great honor that I'm here today. We are having this particular program. Over the years, we've been having periodic events where we bring together people from all over the world to engage in storytelling, where we have people tell positive narrative and we just engage in that positive aurora storytelling. And today, I'm very happy to have ambassadors from all over the world joining us. Please, wherever you are, you can just give some emojis celebrating yourself and tapping into this vision that I don't want to continuously be the promoter of negative stories, but I want to transition. I want to tell positive stories. And I'm so happy that this is currently happening. This is a huge milestone for BISA and when it comes to our journey also, because we are saying that we want to continuously empower communities with vibrant storytelling that highlights the richness of African cultures and the dynamism that each people carries. We are driven by a mission in BISA to say that communities become at the forefront of promoting their own inspiring stories. We are having a vision to create awareness of happenings in Africa and foster local impacts and growth through communities. So we are saying that we don't want to be inspired by Stories of Africa, but be inspired with Stories of Africa, where you are not just passing by in the stories, but you are joining in the story creation. And today, as we are unveiling all these ambassadors, we are reaffirming our commitment to connecting, to empowering, and transforming communities across Africa. And to all our new ambassadors, I just want to tell you that your voice are vessels of change, and your duties are the vase that we are hoping that each story you contribute resonate with the hearts and minds of both local and global audiences. So we don't want the stories to just end here. We want them to continue. And your skills are very important because I know that with respect to this particular narrative formation, you need effective communication, you need storytelling, you need research skills, you need interpersonal relationship, you need leadership, you need creativity. And BISA, we are hoping that we can provide this support to you all because it's our commitment to nurturing your skills. And this particular program serves as one of the milestones to make that happen because we have diverse audience. We have different speakers from all over the world coming to take us through powerful communication, powerful elements in public speaking. This is more than just a role, fellow ambassadors. It is a journey that today we embark on, and together, tomorrow, we shape a vision, we shape a future that each step aimed is towards enhancing the influence and the impact of African narratives. Thank you so much for your commitment, and I look forward to a powerful event. Over to you, Yaira.
Thank you so much, Betty, for this empowering presentation. I promise that this event is going to be empowering and it has already started. Thank you. And indeed, there should be balance when it comes to the narrative from Africa. It shouldn't be just the negative out there. It should also be the positive narrative. And who are the best people to drive that positive narrative than Africans themselves? So this is something amazing you are doing at Be Inspired with Stories from Africa. I corrected myself there. Be Inspired with Stories from Africa, amazing. Having to tell stories of over 100 people, having 10,000 subscribers, over 15 countries. Amazing things, amazing things. Thank you so much for that empowering presentation. So moving on, we will be diving deeper. And to help us do this, I would love to welcome the Community Engagement Officer for BISA, Esther Ejapon. She will be guiding us through the roles, responsibilities, and the code of conduct, as well as the annual draft program. Esther, over to you.
Hello, everyone. My name is Esther Ejapon. I'm the Community Engagement Officer for BISA. I'm so glad to be here. It's really an honor to meet amazing people across the world, across Africa, who are willing to be ambassadors, who are willing to share their stories, who are willing to be agents of transformation. Thank you all officially. For the second time, you're welcome. You've been officially welcome. So we won't waste much time. I'll take you through your roles, your responsibilities as an ambassador, who really is even an ambassador, and what do you have to do, what's expected of you, and other things. So first of all, I'm going to explain to you what it means to be an ambassador. So who is an ambassador? The word might be, familiar with some of us because it's quite a common word. We know countries have ambassadors. So basically, an ambassador is somebody like a representative of a nation or a country or a state who is supposed to represent the country by representing the country's policies, the country's processes, largely information about the country in a very transformational way. Now, in this context, so an ambassador basically means a representative, right? I want you to keep that in mind. In this context, we are looking at being a representative of your sphere, right? So we have a lot of people from different countries. So I come from Ghana. So if I am an ambassador, I am a representative of everything Ghanaian. I'm supposed to, through me, there's supposed to be better stories to tell. There's supposed to be better highlights of a lot of things. It can be food, it can be clothing, it can be transformational works, it can be artworks, anything about Ghana that brings transformation is supposed to come through me. So basically, that is what an ambassador is. So that's who an ambassador is. So the word might be, maybe some of you, when you saw it, you were, okay, this is a familiar word, but or for some of you, it sounded like a huge thing, but basically you are a representative. And with Be Inspired with Stories from Africa, we are focusing on driving more of positive narrative. So as a representative, your duty is to push better narratives about Africa from your country that you come from. And the interesting thing is that with this, when you become an ambassador, some of you, I'm sure you've lived in your country for years, let's say 10 years, 20 years, 15 years, 30 years, but there might be some distinct things about your country that you do not even know about. When you become an ambassador, you are going to be, for a better word, I'll say, you are going to be privy to some interesting things that you might not even have discovered or you might not have known in your country, but by engaging stakeholders, by engaging your community members, you get to know more, you get to enhance your knowledge, and it can really inspire change. So basically, that is who an ambassador is. And first of all, I want us to have this in mind, just some keywords, right? So Betty mentioned what BISA does, what inspired the creation of BISA. Some keywords I would want you to remember or look at is highlighting initiatives. And in this regard, positive initiatives, right? Positive stories. Also keyword Africa. We're looking at Africa. Betty said she was inspired because when she went to a conference and everybody was sharing stories and everything negative about Africa. And that has been the narrative for a long time. So we want to change that. So Africa, we're doing everything about Africa and using storytelling to push narratives about Africa and also using a platform. So if you have a story, you don't put it on any platform. Nobody's going to know about it. So in the Western world, they've done lots and lots of movies about their countries, and we have believed it over the years. Other plenty movies that I could mention, talk of the recent one, the Black Panther, they try even to tell a story about African bravery. We've seen Olympus Has Fallen, other movies over time, and we have believed it. They have used their platform. So in this regard, an ambassador, you're going to use BISA as a platform and also social media to push narratives, to change the narratives we already know about. So would move straightly to the role of an ambassador, basically. So the first point here is positive representation. So for some of us in the countries where we've lived in for long, we might be used to the negative news, especially because of the news we hear day in, day out. But trust me, like Betty said, there are so many positive stories that need to be brought up. Why do we do positive representation? The more we share the good stories, the more we share positive stories, we have an opportunity to change policy directions. We have an opportunity to change how the Western world sees us. Some agencies in Africa, some organizations, some people are trying to do amazing things in Africa and are not getting support. And there are organizations outside that will readily support, but it's the information they are exposed to that is limiting us in Africa. And it's a sad thing. So it's even influencing a lot of people moving outside of Africa with their ideas to implement it elsewhere. That should not be the case. So that is a key thing why we should push the positive representation and also of the BISA brand within your community. So you want to be a rep of BISA wherever you are. Push the fact that it's an organization that is solely into pushing positive narratives. Yes. And the second point will be on brand awareness. We want to look at promoting and generating awareness about the BISA brand through effective communication. So as an ambassador, I need you to look at joining BISA as a brand, as an identity, and how do I project BISA in a way that people would want to come on board and share their stories. Effective communication, communicating the right information. That is who an ambassador is, and that's what an ambassador is supposed to do. We want to also look at story scouting. So one of the key roles of an ambassador is to search for and collect inspiring stories within your community. So we're on story scouting. The key role of an ambassador is to scout for stories. We're looking at using our platform to push more stories. And by stories, we don't only mean for most of us, because we follow the news and a lot of things on social media, we are used to certain type of stories, stories that are interesting or funny. Those are good if they put a positive narrative, but we want to look at stories that inspire, stories of people starting new things, stories of resilience, people in a community that's seems more like an impossible environment, but you're able to break through and do something. Recently, we have a story on our website of a guy who started making bags from banana fiber. And when I really read more about the gentleman, I was like, this is beautiful. This is amazingly beautiful. When we finish, we can share the link with you, follow and watch the story. You know, he really pushed through. Initially, he wasn't getting the support. You know, who would think of making fabrics from banana fiber? It's quite unheard of or quite unconventional, but he was able to push through, has employed other people, is able to get more younger people to do something with their crafts in his community. Those are stories that we are looking at, stories that inspire, stories of people trying to do interesting things, stories of people. It can be an individual, it can be a group in a community, it can be a remote community, it can be in the city. Something that you think that this could really represent BISA and our objectives. That is what an ambassador is going to do. We're also looking at event coordination, right? We would be doing training sessions for ambassadors so that you become, so this is more like a ripple effect. So Betty had had the dream to start this some years ago. She started this. She's brought some of us on board. We're moving. We have also brought you on board. So it's not even about me being part of a company. It's like a movement, right? So as you scout for stories, you speak to more people, then you are also built up to train other people to do capacity building trainings and other things for other people also. Organize events. You can do an art event, to celebrate people in your community, people you might have interviewed, or people you would want to, share their stories as well. Yes. And we want to look at supporting activities. We want every ambassador to actively support, promote, and participate in all BISA activities. We have quite a number of activities that goes on through the year. We have climate activities, the Guiding Green Growth Summit. We have speaking engagements we organize. We have other events that come up. And as an ambassador, we want you to be well versed in the objectives of BISA. So you don't just, scout for stories and that's it. You deliver the story, that's it. We want you to be part of a community. You grow and you get more of what BISA is about. I'm sure in the future I would have some of you even bringing other people on board as the community grows. Yes. And the last point will be interview collation. An ambassador, some of you might not have done interviews before, and that's why we'll be having training sessions. But before you come up with a very good story, we want you to speak to some stakeholders, interview people in your communities. And by interview, we don't strictly mean like how it's done in the news. Maybe you have to be in a specific setting, a professional setting, not necessarily that. You can get people that have amazing stories. Just develop a conversation with them. As they speak, you get an overview of what their story is about, what really they are passionate about. Then you get a story from that and you interview them on certain key points that you think would highlight their story. Yes, so basically that's the role of an ambassador. I think we'll move on to Betty, if we can move on to their responsibilities. Yes, great. So we want to look at monthly story creation. Monthly story creation. We're looking at pushing monthly stories. So as we go on with the trainings and equip some of you, we would want that as you scout for stories, you can bring the story ideas, you can share it with me, Betty, the media officer. We'll look through the stories, see how viable the stories are. So you go back to the stakeholders you're spoken to, you book interview dates with them, and you work on the stories, you bring them. So every month we have one story that stands out that we want to push. Every month we want you to have a story to push out there. Also, you can have people registering to tell their stories. Some people might not want to, be interviewed on video, right? Some people might not be comfortable with it. You can have them, we'll have a link where they can register to share their stories. We have a website where we share amazing stories. They can register and be part to share their stories as well. We also want to look at stakeholder lists. One of the main responsibilities also of an ambassador is compiling a comprehensive list of stakeholders in your community, including those you have interviewed, those yet to be interviewed, potential sponsors. Yes, potential sponsors. You should speak to some, community leaders, some agency leaders you might know around. This is the mission we are on. And you are an ambassador. This is what we want to push. Some people might even want to sponsor, it can be your event or, bringing even younger people together to train. We want you to compile a list of lookouts for, people like that who can sponsor, people who would want to share their stories. And how can you come up with this? Pay attention to news on the ground. Pay attention to the news, right? On TV, you can get ideas from that. You can also speak to community leaders around you. You can speak to other friends in other communities also around you. They could say, oh, somebody even mentioned that, oh, this is a great initiative. Somebody even wanted to start something like, or somebody mentioned that they want something like this to be out there. This is a great platform. You compile and bring all those people on board. Then we follow up on them keenly as we go. We know that some of them might not be readily available to share. Let's say if you speak to them this month, it will take a while for them to share, but we'll follow keenly on them and, bring them on board to follow more of what we do. We also want to look at social media engagement. As an ambassador, one of the things you're going to do is follow, promote, and actively engage with all our social media handles. So BISA, we're present on Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, LinkedIn, right? So we want you to, follow on YouTube. We have a lot of interviews we've done. After here, you can watch, we'll share the links with you. You can watch them, get to understand the kind of stories we do, and share it on all your social media platforms. That also means that as an ambassador, you need to be ready to push your social media handles. You can't be an ambassador and be hiding. Some of us this might be new to us, but if you look at who an ambassador is, every ambassador is known. If you go to every country, you say you're looking for embassy of so and so, it's always glaring. Their offices are always in the open, and who the ambassador is always open. So you can't be an ambassador and not be, not communicate properly and not push a certain narrative. So on your social media handles, you need to push and promote BISA. You can even also bring on board other ideas as to how to, push the BISA brand on social media as well. Share all the positive stories we post. We also look at meetings and engagements. As an ambassador, it's mandatory that you attend quarterly meetings with the BISA team. We'll be having quarterly meetings on progress, on some of your challenges, on, some suggestions, some things you might have observed on the ground. You are in different countries. So I think every country might have its peculiar challenges or peculiar differences. So every quarter, we're going to have meetings, and it's very mandatory as an ambassador to be part of those meetings so that we brainstorm and push the narrative of BISA. We want to look at content enhancements also. As an ambassador, I think I mentioned that earlier, suggest creative ideas to improve BISA content and BISA programs. So as you move on speaking to people, some individuals or organizations that you might speak to, could, in your interviews, they could pass a comment or they could share something that you think, oh, BISA can add up to what we are already doing to, make our brand more visible or make the stories get a wider mileage. We are also open to that, and we expect that of every ambassador. Now, your LinkedIn profile, we expect that every ambassador should have a LinkedIn profile. And LinkedIn is a very professional platform. So we want you to push the BISA brand also there and reflect your role on your LinkedIn platform as a BISA ambassador. When you do that, the advantage is that you might get even other people coming to you. Oh, this is what you do. I have a story from here. I have a story from here. I have a story from here. I want us to push this. There's something I've seen here. Can we pick it up? Then it even makes the work easier for you as an ambassador and for the team as well. Yeah, so that will be it for the responsibilities. As interesting and as detailed as this role is, we want to be sure that all of us are on the same platform. All of us have the same mindset towards the work we are doing. Towards, like I said, it's a movement. It's a movement. So we want to know that all of us are on the same path, right? Moving towards the same goal. And so we're looking at the kind of conduct you should have as an ambassador. Also, when you put yourself out there as an ambassador, you put yourself up for, a certain level of accountability, both in your community, on your social media, and also to the team. So one of the code of conducts is having ethical ethical reasons for whatever you do. As an ambassador, the kind of stories you share, the kind of content you put out there, if let's say you speak to somebody, you interview someone, you might have your personal, reasons or personal biases towards a certain story, but you have to know how to go about it. Your choice of words, how you go about interviewing people. One of the interviews we had, Betty interviewed one of the guys, and
Hi,
she had
Esther.
to go to
Hi, Esther.
yes,
Please, you
hello.
do have like 5 minutes to wrap
Yes,
up.
yes.
So please.
Right, right. Sure, sure. Okay. So I mentioned that Betty had to go into a room. It's a story on black soldier flies. And there were a lot of, flies there. But from the interview, you could realize she composed herself, because she had to really get the environment she is in. And she didn't have to make them feel like I'm not supposed to be here, but maybe I'm doing it for a certain reason. I don't know if some of you get me, but always do everything you do ethically. You should have sensitivity and respect towards anybody you come across, anyone's story you decide to share. Respect and sensitivity, no matter who they are. They don't have to be a high-profile person before you are called them respect, because you do not know how far their story will go. We're also looking at authorized use of the BISA name. As an ambassador, your main role is to gather stories, bring up stories, speak to people, bring out narrative that we can push on our social media in your communities. Any other thing outside of this sphere is we don't condone you using the name BISA for any other benefits. That will not be a good thing. Also, lastly, I would like to talk about attention to detail. Yes, as an ambassador, you need to pay more attention to detail as well. Always pay attention to detail. Don't just assume something is this way or that way. Ask questions and have the right amount of information. So lastly, shortly, I have short time. We'll run through the draft program. Let's do a short run through to the draft program. Okay, so for the first quarter, we'll be looking at what we are doing: onboarding, orientation, storytelling workshop on community and community engagement planning. The objective is to introduce ambassadors to BISA's mission and role, develop storytelling skills for the workshop. We'll have a workshop on how to go about storytelling and also how to prepare for community events. Yes, we know that some of you might be used to doing events already, but sometimes when it comes to these events, there might be some guidelines that you need to go through. So we'll train you on that for the first quarter. The second quarter, we're going to look at you executing community event yourself. So look at what is needed in your community and execute it. We're going to look at quarterly review your progress and gather feedback. Review things that you've done well, things that you've not done well, stories you missed out on, all those things, and bring feedback. We also want to look at social media campaign, looking at boosting your online presence and engagement. We're going to be having all those activities. We're going to having advanced skills training the third quarter. We want to enhance your leadership and public speaking. So at BISA, we don't only bring you aboard to do a bidding. I mean, I'm sure some of you might think, okay, you are just doing something for Betty, or you are doing something for the team. This, I said, like, it's a movement. So we bring you on board. As you gather stories, we also train you. We enhance your leadership skills, public speaking skills, so that you're also able to grow and do other things for yourself. We'll look at mid-year strategy session, how to plan for the second half of the year, and other things to do. We also want to look at collaborative project development. You can bring up projects that we can do together, with other stakeholders. In the last quarter, we'll look at impact reporting and story compilation, how to document and report impact of your stories. You don't just bring stories and we interview and put it out there. We're also looking more on impact. After the story, what happens? We also want to look at year-end community events, celebrate successes, and engage communities on the aftermath of stories. Then we'll look at annual reflection and awards ceremony, reflect on our achievements, plan for the next year. We would like to also award the work that you've done for various, sessions. Everybody will be awarded in their own special way. So basically, that will be the annual plan. I'm far behind time, but
You
I
are,
believe,
you are.
yes.
Great.
I believe that in all, we've been able to get who an ambassador is, what you're expected to do. And as we move on, some of you will get the broader picture of what BISA is, what our objectives is, and how we are excited to have you on board. Thank you.
Okay, thank you so much, Esther, for your presentation. And I believe with this presentation, all new ambassadors have clearly now know their roles, responsibilities, and the annual plan for them. So we will quickly move on because we are behind time. We will have Fatu M. Kaba, an awarding peace activist, TEDx speaker, storytelling podcaster, and the CEO for Hearts Global, empowering fiction and non-fiction authors, people and culture advocates, dialogues on trauma and non-violence. She will be talking to us about the mastering of arts in storytelling, from narrative development to overcoming anxiety. So please.
Hi everybody. I hope you are all doing okay. My name is Fatu. I've already introduced. Yeah, it's been really good hearing all the amazing things besides doing. And when I got this invite, I just like, man, talking to Africans about storytelling. I got a lot to say about that. So I'm gonna try my best to like keep this as short as possible and then just allow for some interaction, because for me, story is about being expressive, it's about owning the narrative. And I just also want to like just hear why some of you are part of BISA as just storytelling and why storytelling. But before we do that, let me just introduce myself a little bit. My name is Fatu. My stage name is Fatu M. It's basically my first and last name, and I wear a lot of hats. I'm a podcaster, and I just have a podcast where people just come to my show and they just like tell their stories. I've been on TEDx. I write novels. I'm also a fashion model, and I'm currently running a nonprofit, basically a social venture called Heart. And the essence of Heart is really rooted in storytelling. And the reason why I started Heart was also because as an African who traveled from the US to Canada and in different countries in Africa, I see how people tell our stories. I didn't like how people tell our stories. So I decided I want to tell our own stories. I want us to own our narrative. And yeah, I have a master's in peace studies, and technology, entrepreneurship, innovation from sorry, I'm just kind of like rushing it because I don't want to like be beyond time. I know I'm already beyond time, but this is just a little summary about myself. And I just want you guys, just like 2 minutes quick, just like write in the chat, tell me what is storytelling for you and why is it important for you to tell your own story?
For me, storytelling is more of like a tool of advocacy. When we put stories there, it creates a platform for engagement with our public entities, with the duty bearers, with the stakeholders. So to me, I use it as invoking dialogue between the responsible persons within the community and so forth.
I love that. That's great. Like my platform is also based on advocacy and storytelling. So it is indeed a very powerful tool for storytelling to unveil the hidden potential. That is amazing. And I think as Africans, we have like a lot of potential. We have a lot of stories from our folktales to our personal lives. They're just amazing. It's an art. It's important for it to vessel for creating positive change. Oh, that is so good. That's almost summarized like my mission statement of empowering underrepresented voices through storytelling. So I love all of these you've provided. And I'm also just going to, okay, perfect. So just like a quick question, someone just like unmute yourself and answer. As an African, have you ever like traveled abroad? What did you hear about Africa? Let me tell you a story. And this happened last night, like literally last night. And I was like, it has to be part of my presentation. I have a good friend of mine who was on TikTok. I don't know what she saw on TikTok. And she texted me and she said, Fatu, you also was raised in Africa, right? And I went, I feel like I know where this is going. And she said, did you ever see the lions and the elephants? And I just went, oh my God. And so I had to take time to tell her, no, I have not. And there are Africans who are, but there are Africans who have not. So this is important because it reveals not only the misconceptions people have about Africa, but also how stories have the power to change narrative, to create. And it always creates like narratives that, whether it's about you, whether it's about me, or it's about someone else, it's very inclusive narratives. So when we are not careful about the stories we tell, it creates a lot of damage to either an individual or the people. And that is why what Chimamanda will call the danger of a single story. Sorry, I don't know what Zoom is doing with me. And that is why Chimamanda will call the danger of a single story, because sometimes when people don't tell full stories or they only create half stories, it becomes an issue for all of us, right? Stories have the ability to communicate. It can be something that we can use to empower. It can be something we could use to destroy people. Like most places right now, as African, when we go, the first thing they think about, they don't think about how unique, powerful, or strong you are. They think about, oh, the elephants, the giraffe, or the poverty, or the Ebola crisis, or the Civil War, right? I remember once I was on Goodread, just finding an African book, and I saw a particular comment where this guy said, the story was not authentically African because the story did not have a lot of violence. Sorry, the story did not have a lot of violence and abuse, because when a story is authentically African, there had to be a lot of violence and abuse portrayed in the story. But since the author wrote a story from Africa and the story didn't have a lot of like rape, violence, sorry for the language, and trauma, this guy made an argument as to why that story was not African. Imagine a group of people, like about 54 countries, different cultures, different people, different heritage. And his only reason for basically putting all of us in a box is based on the few stories he's been told over and over and over and over by Africa. And that is why it's important. So what is storytelling? Storytelling is an art of connection. It can be in different ways. Storytelling is meant to convey messages, experiences, ideas, and narratives. This can be about people. This can be used by brands, products, like all the brands, all the famous brands, have stories. Like you go to Gucci already tell you, why Gucci? Why do you have to buy Gucci? You go to Apple always start with why? Because stories have power to connect people. And it's the story usually that make people want to like take their credit card to buy from you, right? And one of the important things about stories is that there is no physical or geographical barrier. So the things you post online has an ambassador. Someone in Canada, like me, I could be reading it. And that story could determine how much I think about maybe Kenya or Mali or some other African country, right? And one of the most important thing about stories is that they inspire actions. And as a TEDx speaker, I can particularly relate to this because TEDx is based on ideas, but these ideas are based on ideas that inspires actions. So stories have the power to actually make people do things. Like action basically mean doing things. And they can be tool for change. Like we can use story to get people to rally up, to show up for us or to abandon us. Stories are very important and they always start with like, why are you doing this? Like for me, a lot of people always ask me, why, right? So it's very important how we tell stories and the way we tell them. So why does it matter for Africans especially? One, it's about our identity. The stories we create help our identities, our values, and also use those values to build up the next generation. Preserving our culture, Africa is so diverse. We have, like, I'm from Liberia, but my ancestry is from Mali, and we have hundreds of stories that are diverse, that are different, that are rich. So the way we pass down these stories could be something that becomes a huge part of how we carry down our lineage. And I already mentioned how much empowering and uplifting stories can be, especially around our African identity. And also, they create resilience. Like, for example, I love reading the story of President Ellen Johnson Sirleaf because looking at a woman who was a president for my country, it makes me understand that if she can be there, I can be it. And sometimes when I feel like I don't want to go on, I read her book and I'd be like, damn, why did she do it? I want to do the same. So that's the power of story. That could also be for Nelson Mandela that most of us know around here. When I read his book, I used to like hear about Mandela, but when I read his book that he wrote himself, it was a whole different ballgame for me. So stories are very powerful. And also they allow us to build understanding, right? There is empathy in stories. I am a strong advocate for community and working together. You guys will let me know if I'm running out of time so I can try to like speed it
I
up.
will.
But
You will.
all right.
We are looking at 10 minutes currently.
All right, good. So stories allow us to promote understanding and connect with one another regardless of our culture, right? Cultural relativism, they're all based on the idea that I understand who you are, I accept and respect who you are. It's also the stories we tell about each other. We have two genres of story, actually three, but the two popular ones, some of you are already familiar with, is fictional stories and non-fictional stories. So fictional basically are stories from our imagination, which is one of the things I like to do sometimes. And non-fiction, these are like biographies, like I was just mentioning the biography of our former president, Ellen Johnson Sirleaf, and how much it impacted me. It could be documentaries. It could also be like Harry Potter, like nonfiction, fictional stories like Harry Potter. I'm sure all of you have also watched. And one of my favorite part or that I use the most is called creative nonfiction, which is not talked about a lot. And creative nonfiction basically is like a mix of fiction and nonfiction. It's where people use, for example, I saw something in my community and I want to write about it, but I know I'm going to get bitten if I write about it. So you could basically write the story, but use some creative elements to change how that story is told, just so you're not offending people. Or maybe even if not like for offending, right? Sometimes stories create very emotional impact on people and you want to avoid that. I wrote a story called Harder Choices. And it was very, very emotional. And the story is based on real life event I have seen, but I use fiction to really depict some of these stories. So it's basically a blend of both. So we have very different mediums of storytelling. One is oral tradition, one that we pass word of mouth from generation to generation. That most of us are familiar with, your grandma, your aunt, so just like someone sitting down and just sharing story with us. This could be stories of Sundiata Keita or just like some great African leaders. And some could be writing. I also do a lot of writing, articles and blogs. They just like depending on your strength and what you feel really matter to you. And we have visual storytelling, right? We have photography, art. And right now in digital age where we have like a lot of like tool, videos have become very popular, like using reels to tell stories. I always like start my content with, let's talk about this, story time. So there are very different mediums we can use to basically convey different or the same messages. Digital storytelling, we have social media. I'm sure all of you use right now. We have podcasts. I just mentioned that I have a podcast, and we have like there's different online medium we use to tell stories. So another interactive activity, what's your preferred method of storytelling and why? Just like 1 or 2%, just like shout out.
This is Mohanji from Fliptown, and I'm very, very excited, and I feel a lot of synergy connecting with all of you people at Be Inspired. Sure, I've been doing storytelling through a method that I would call my very own, which is actually the real life experience. We have had a movement by Fliptown where we go out of our community, where we started a decentralized approach to grassroots action, and we enter other towns as campers, learn about their community in about 2 weeks, and then come out to tell them about their community. And it is very surprising how people in an area don't know enough about their very area here in Africa, and they know more about maybe some other areas they have learned about in other stories out there, the stories that they get in the news and all these things. So we go about our storytelling using a real life experience kind of thing. And actually, when you check out our social media at Fliptown on Instagram and all these platforms, you'll discover that we have presented a real life history of our town, so that in the future people can look back and say, this was the real life question of what is on your mind that is presented by social media and all these platforms. We want the world in the future to know exactly what was on the local mind of our people.
Prefer methods of storytelling. One, you see, when I first introduced myself, you saw my logo, and you must be thinking, what is that? I'm going to tell you what my logo is made of. It's actually made of the Kora, and the Kora, for the Madinka people, it's basically what we use usually to tell oral stories. And that is why I have podcasts. It's very visual, but it's also allow people to communicate verbally and to interact and connect to people. So we have very different means and medium we tell story. And this, for me, it's very personal because it connects with my heritage as an African, but also allow me to explain why I'm doing the things I'm doing. Someone see my logo and be like, what is that? I'm able to like explain myself and tell them. And I just like love how when we talk to people face to face, we connect in very different ways. Now, let's talk about narrative development, right? There are some very key elements to like developing a story. The first thing is, who's the character of your story? That character could be you, it could be your sibling, it could be your family member, it could be like just anybody that is very essential to that story. And that's what we call protagonist, or sometimes like hero, or we're going to call hero, heroine. Anyways, so one of the things you also want to look at is that what's the conflict? Like basically, conflict doesn't have to be something that is bad. Like I did a lot of studies with conflict, and conflict could be a good thing, it could be a bad thing. But you want to like create like a situation, maybe like a confusion. It doesn't even have to be like necessarily a confusion. It could be just maybe someone got to an obstacle, or somebody starting a business and they got to a roadblock, and they be like, how do I bootstrap for my next project? Or how do I raise money for my next project, right? And you being able to say, oh, he started this product, or she started this product, and she had problem raising money for it, and this is the medium what she used to like raise money. That could be the conflict. It could also be for a fictional story. Maybe he fell in love with a girl and it didn't work out. What happened? That could be the conflict, right? And then how it was resolved, like I just mentioned. And one of the most important things about stories is the emotional side of things, being able to portray the emotions. Emotions are very, very powerful. And there are a lot of like business research that actually says how much emotions can play when it comes to products, like somebody actually going to Walmart or going to, I don't know, popular African store around you, sorry, but just like going to the supermarket and being able to buy something they didn't intend to buy. Emotions, most of the time, especially in stories, can be logic. So it's very important, but also important that we remember that emotions can actually really break people. If we tell emotional like narratives about people in different ways, there are cases of bullying, there are cases of harassment, there are cases of abuse, it can be very important, like very, very important.
So Fatu, you do have 4 minutes to wrap up.
Okay, thank you. So what are some of the techniques for overcoming, for confidence and overcoming anxiety? One, visualization, being able to imagine yourself successfully telling that story. Remember, it's your story, unless it is someone else's story. But especially in the case of fiction, remember, nobody else can tell it better than you. Another is take a deep breath. Like, honestly speaking, I don't think we can totally get rid of anxiety, but it's important if we just like understand that anxiety is a very natural part of who we are, and just being able to go past that. You're going to be anxious every time you tell a story, but you get to a point where you feel comfortable, at least in that level of discomfort, anxiety. So be able to practice deep breathing and just take a break, give yourself a break. And also be mindful, stay in the present is very important. Prepared. I'm going to tell you like a personal story, right? During our TEDx preparation, we took at least 4 months just to prepare for a 10 minutes talk. It's very important. Preparation makes progress. Final thought, with experience and practice, you tell better stories. Honestly, you're not gonna like tell good stories all at once, but eventually you're gonna tell good stories. Now, some of the things I always like to look for when telling stories are these key 3 things. One is credibility. Why should people listen to your stories? It's the ethos. It's usually based on maybe your past experiences, maybe you've been working in similar capacity or you've done similar thing, but why should people listen to your story? Pathos, the emotions. I already mentioned emotions. I'm just gonna go straight to the logic. And sometimes people who are very logical and they don't want to deal with emotions, like these 3, you don't always have to use all of them in the same story. Sometimes they go in the same story, sometimes they don't. But just being able to keep one of those elements and say, I'm building this emotion that is based on this story based on credibility, that then you build it based on credibility, or you say it's purely logic, that's totally fine, or it's just purely emotion. That's also totally fine. So effective storytelling technique, know your audience, know who you're talking to. And sometimes the people you're talking to presently could not necessarily be your audience. It could be the people they talk to, or it could be the people that watch your presentation afterwards. These could be your audience. So knowing your audience can be very important. Maybe you are an African telling stories about certain things that happen in Africa, and you're talking to white folks. Know how you're talking to these folks, because the things you say matters, and what you don't say or say could be very important on how you implicate everybody else. Be authentic, be true to yourself. You want to talk good stories about Africa, but also make sure your stories are very authentic and your characters or the people you're talking about are not just one-dimensional, but rather they are what we call tri or multi-dimensional. They have personality, they are people, they feel, they think, they act, and also be clear, like be consistent with your message and also inspire something for people to look up to. We have a lot of negativity already in life, so we don't always want to do negativity. So I already mentioned your audience. Do not ignore your audience. Avoid stereotype. Avoid stories like it's always like the poverty in Africa. Africa has a lot of good things, like already mentioned. So avoid like the poverty, the dehumanization of people, and don't create fake authenticity. I already said that. And avoid confusing plot or like overly complicating things for people. Someone say, if a better communication is where you communicate as if you're talking to like 5 years old. So whatever message you're sharing, make sure that you can talk to a 5-year-old and they'll be able to understand that message. I already mentioned negativity, and I'm just gonna like skip a few of these and then just go to this one, because this is very important, especially if depending on the kind of way you choose to tell stories. You have a lot of technology too you can actually use to tell your story. So we have Grammarly, we have ChatGPT, which is one of my favorite, depending on how you choose to teach ChatGPT, it can be very helpful, but also can be harmful if you are not careful. And we have Canva, where you basically just use to create a lot of visuals and aids for your presentation. They can be very helpful. And Google Docs, I use a lot of Google products for writing, and they can be especially like helpful with being able to keep my work. Sometimes you lost a device, but you have everything online. So these are like different tools you can actually use. There are more, but these are like the ones I'm very familiar with and I've used, and they have been very helpful to me. Ethical storytelling. This is very important, especially as Africans. One, I already mentioned dehumanization. It's very, very important to create people that are people and not people that are just like symbols, the people who without feelings, people, for example, Africa, they're just killing each other, or Africa, they're just fighting against each other. These are not humans. Like, these are like, I don't know how to mention it, but these are not human stories. Be sure to, even if it's a fictional story, I always respect my characters. They are people, they are important. And the way you respect your character, the way you treat your character, their dignity, their respect, also help people to understand and relate to these characters. Make sure when you're sharing stories that are nonfiction, have consent. Let people know that you have their consent to share the stories. I was doing a podcast interview once, and I had someone who got very emotional. She broke down, she started crying. I had to go back to her and say, are you sure you're comfortable with me releasing this footage? We talked about it, and she was okay, and I released the footage. So be careful about consent, and remember that stories build trust, but they can also break trust. So my key takeaway for you is stories are powerful. Stories are tools we use to create and control our narrative. They are tools that inspire actions. They also allow us to, it could be like a difference between getting $1 million deal or just not getting any deal at all, or just basically being able to get a scholarship or not getting a scholarship. I applied to a lot of scholarships abroad, and most of them were really based on how well you can write your essays that are based on stories. I already mentioned ethics and stereotypes, and also being sensitive and respectful about the topics you write about as Africans. And yeah, remember they are powerful. And this is my final challenge to you before I close up. I want you to first, when you leave here today, after you've left, I want you to Google your country. Just go online and Google Liberia, Google Mali, and take a look at the headlines. Take a look at what people see. Someone did this to me once when I was in Liberia, and I nearly broke down. Because when I Google Liberia, I was just like, that is not my country. Like, there was nothing about the beautiful culture, the people and things I saw every day in my life as a Liberian, but rather it was all the war, the Ebola. It was just like the worst things that even when I first got to America and someone asked me, oh, what's your country? And I told her my country, and she actually came back the next day and she said, I Google your country. And I went, oh my God. So Google your country and take a look at it. And after you've done that, I want you to take a pledge, like a personal pledge. This could be as part of your BISA ambassador program, or just like your own initiative. Take a pledge to change one of the things you see online. That could be through your blogs you write, that could be through the videos you create, that could be through the books you write, that could just be through any small thing, but take a pledge to change one of the things you see. And then think about different ways your pledge could contribute to not only you, but whoever that is reading that, and thinking about how it can rechange their identity. Maybe an African on a bus. For example, me once on a train, and a white guy seeing me. And the first thing he's asking me was, have you seen the elephants and giraffes? I've gotten that a lot of time. And I know some of you are here from Kenya. someone want to ask my friend from Kenya if she swam from Kenya to the United States. So the stories we create are powerful, and I hope these tools are helpful. Sorry, I had to like just basically run through time, but I will try my best to like send a slide to you guys, to Betty, and she can like share with you guys if you find it interesting. You can also connect with me. I'm on Instagram and LinkedIn most actively. And yeah, that was, I hope I didn't run out of time. And that was just like, if you have like any question, I'm happy to answer afterwards.
Thank you so much, Fatu. So we'll definitely have a session for questions and answers. So please do well to write down your questions, and we would answer them at the end of the event. And thank you so much, Fatu, for such an inspiring and interesting presentation. And personally, as I was listening to you, especially the part you spoke about Googling your country and seeing the headlines and stories that come up, the question I asked myself is, what can I do to change the narrative? And it just dawned on me that's what BISA is here for, to drive the positive narrative. And storytelling from this presentation, I've seen storytelling is not for a unique group of people. Anyone can learn the art of storytelling and then use it to drive that positive narrative, to provide inspiration, and to impact people. Because storytelling, as Fatu has shown to us, is very needed to connect with people. So thank you so much, Fatu, for that presentation. And to lead us in understanding the power of public speaking within storytelling is Evans Edujemfi, a distinguished Toastmaster and advocate for communication in higher education. So, Mr. Evans, the floor is yours.
Ago.
Hey.
Ago. Thank you very much, Madam Moderator Yaira. And what a wonderful learning moment we've had. Fatu, you introduced us to the Kora. I present to you from Accra, Ghana, the Seprewa. Well, that is to say, whether you are in Mali or Liberia or in Accra, Ghana, we are Africans. And we are united by the uniqueness of our stories. Yes, diverse language, but the strength of our stories as Africans make us one. So, as Madam Moderator rightly said, I am someone, a young one, who has devoted part of his life to advocate for the care for the elderly. Well, a Nigerian once told me that the result and the price of a good work done is more work. So, when I have come here to meet my fellow young Africans to deliberate on the power of public speaking and storytelling, I don't think I should give myself more work. So with your kind permission, I will take off my hat and come to you just as I am. Good afternoon. Ladies and gentlemen, especially the ambassadors of being inspired of stories from Africa, BISA. I am here today to share a short story, a very short story on public speaking and why, as ambassadors, you must embrace that power in this poignant tool called public speaking to make your work easier. This is BISA, where stories are told. So I'll tell you a story. A story I personally enjoyed by creating in the year 2014. I was having a conversation with a friend, and then I asked her, have you ever been to Togo? She said, no. I said, why don't we go to Togo? Can't we go to Togo? She said, why not? We grabbed our passport, and before we could say Jack, we were in Lomé. Well, as a Toastmaster, always a Toastmaster, we go to Lomé, and we walk into one of the Toastmasters meetings, Kekeli Toastmasters to be precise. And somebody in the meeting identified me. That is a Toastmaster from Ghana. Even before we could introduce ourselves. Guess what? They put me on the spot and I had to deliver a speech graciously. as always, there's a speech in my pocket. So I did deliver. Then something interesting, very interesting, happened. A woman by name Kakraba walks up to me and said, please, can you come with me to my house? We'd like to host you. Host me, a stranger in a foreign land? I said, no, you're not a stranger. I'm actually Ghana's ambassador to Togo. Wow. Wow. That was my first introduction to the diplomatic community in a foreign land. Fellow ambassadors, I will not share with you what the goodies the ambassador shared with me, but I'll only share with you in this short moment I have with you the power of public speaking in storytelling, especially in the context of our understanding as ambassadors. You know what? What you do not know is this, that story untold is the power unreleased. That story untold is the power unleashed if we embrace it. So, yes, you are advocates, and I did enjoy one of you who joined and defined Africa as the land of Cape. Wonderful. How much more can we embrace and redefine and reset our mindset to make our own stories, not what is being told about us, but what we decide to tell? I have challenged Betty because I have been privileged of being part of the BISA story right from the word go, right from the ideation stage. So I've challenged her that we shouldn't be hearing TEDx speaker. We should be hearing a BISA accredited speaker. How about that? Where we will be proud to be associated with Africanism because we are equipped and have the capacity, have what it takes to tell our own stories. So I will take you back to Madame Yaira and what she shared with me for the few minutes that I spent with her. Well, more than minutes. We did about an hour and a half before she personally drove me back to the airport. Number one, as an ambassador, you are a representative of your country. As an ambassador, dear ambassadors, you are a representative of BISA. The earlier speaker did mention, but this is the twist I bring to what she already said. Not only are you fully aware of you being an ambassador as a representative of this wonderful group, BISA, what I'm adding to that is be mindful of what you say. Because whatever you say implicates all of us. Whatever you do not say, which you ought to have said, implicates all of us. And that's the other side of a public speaking. It's not only what is said, it is also what you ought to have said that is not said. So when there was a situation that demanded that you speak up and you kept quiet, it is just as good as you speaking and speaking here. So as an ambassador, what you say implicates all of us. Number two, as an ambassador, your language is your greatest tool. So here was this woman who was born English speaking and now has gone to Togo by virtue of her appreciation of French, but decided that much as I'm in my Francophone country, I am not going to let my English die, and therefore I'm going to join Toastmasters to improve upon my English language. Speak well, dear ambassador. Learn to speak well. Your language is the greatest tool you can use for advocacy, for negotiation, for participation generally. So that's the second lesson. The third lesson, dear ambassador, dear Mr. Ambassador, dear Madam Ambassador of BISA. The third thing I want to leave with you, as I learned from my friend, the ambassador, Ghana's ambassador to Togo in Lomé, is this. Your voice carries more than you think. Your voice. What do I mean by your voice? Your voice represents your intake, what you eat, how you sleep, how you wake up. They all make up your voice. Why? When you speak, we are not just hearing the words you are saying. You are also speaking to us through a medium called your voice. And I'm telling you that whatever you take in, if you're a prison officer here, you appreciate it better if I said your intake. Your intake appreciates your voice. Your intake affects your voice. Your intake determines your voice. So, are you ready to learn? Are you ready to read? Are you ready to listen to podcasts? And so on and so forth. All of that will affect the quality of your voice. What have I said in brief? I have told you that as an ambassador, there is power in public speaking. But that power is premised on three things. First, it is your ability to know that you are an ambassador and therefore you represent a group. Second, that is also about the language you use, that you cannot speak anyhow. There is what to say and what not to say, and when to say it and when not to say it. Last but not least, I have brought to your attention that your voice represents you, and you must be mindful of it. How? Being conscious of what you take in physically, emotionally, intellectually. That said, I'll tell you the latter part of how my time with Mrs. Shaira Amable went. What did we do? We ended up enjoying. It was good food. The treat was exceptional. By the time I was leaving Lomé with this my friend, whom at the point did not even want to consider a friend, I felt empowered. I felt I could do it. Then I asked myself, if I'm getting this kind of treat in Togo, how about if I went to Nigeria, or went to Liberia, or went to almighty Uganda, or went to Kenya? Can you imagine? So I leave that charge with you. Indeed, a charge to keep we both have. There is an Akan proverb that says, "Siedijawa near the aswal," literally saying, if somebody is leaving and decide that I'm keeping something with you, I'm giving you something for you to take good care of, I'm leaving something in your custody. What the person is literally saying is, wherever you go, keep your eye on it as though you are carrying it around. So I came to leave you a charge. The charge is, be ready to improve your public speaking. Be ready to make sure that whatever story you want to tell, you are not just going there to tell the stories as BISA requires, but you are empowering yourself as a great public speaker. A distinguished Toastmaster, I did not know about that yet, because you need more than 10 years of experience to become a distinguished Toastmaster, or the equivalent, depending on how much effort you put into it. So I came to leave you with a charge to keep we have. Madam Moderator, over to you.
Thank you so much, Evans, for such an awesome presentation. Indeed, I really thought I was listening to a Toastmaster. So thank you so much for such an awesome presentation. And indeed, a charge we do have a charge to keep. And BISA is a movement. So just know that you are not alone in this. And wherever you go, you represent BISA. Thank you so much once again, Mr. Evans. So right about now, we will be breaking out into a network session. I encourage everyone to discuss what you're looking forward to in achieving through this ambassadorship and how you can contribute to its success. So kindly proceed.
Okay, great. I have everyone now. So thank you so much. Yara, over to you.
Okay, awesome. So right now we'll break out to have the networking session. It's just going to be for 10 minutes. We come back, have our questions and answers, and then this event will be a wrap. So please look forward to sharing what you seek to achieve with this ambassadorship, how you want to contribute to its success. We'll be taking the questions quickly. If you have any question for any of the speakers, kindly raise your hand or drop it in the chat box. If you have any question for any of the speakers. Okay, Ruby, your hand is up. Please go on.
Okay, so regarding the interviews that we'll be having with the stories that we'll be telling, the stakeholders that will be engaging, would it be online or in person? Must the story capturing be like in person with the people, or we have to meet the people online or something like that? I don't know, maybe some little clarity.
If I can respond to that. Thank you very much, Ruby, for the question. So you capturing the stories is depending on your capacity and whatever resources you have at your availability. However, we would recommend virtual interviews for you to use because I think that is less taxing. But apart from that, too, you can just embed it into your daily activities. You are going on the road, you see something, you take a picture, you want to tell a story about it. So we are not actually telling you to work. We are saying that do something that is natural, but just tell a story about it. I hope I answered your question. Thank you.
Great, Ruby. So I can see Iyande's hand up. Please help me with the pronunciation of your name.
Okay, thank you very much. My name is Abdulkadir Yada. Yes, Jimo from yeah. Thank you very much for this opportunity. Actually, I have two questions, but you've answered one. The second question, one of the speaker, we have as a continent on area of the power of social media, especially on the website. That when we Google our country, so we look at first things that comes up. So I wanted to ask a question that if eventually we come across something negative, we are just thinking of how we can change this narrative for better. So what the way in which we can make a positive narration of our country? So I don't know if this question can be answered and the way to go about it. Thank you very much.
I can just answer directly, right?
Okay, great.
So when I'm just gonna go back to what I did and then tell you what some other things you can do if that's okay. That was a beautiful question. So when I first Googled my country, and I saw that what I did was I set out a campaign. And that campaign, I just got all my Facebook followers, my friends, and I told them what we're gonna do. We're gonna write good articles about our lives, little things we do that are really interesting. Like one of the things for me that was very powerful that even made me a storyteller today was just growing up and having me and my grandma and my siblings sitting down together and talking about stories. Some of these stories, just write them down and just upload them with nice picture. It could be a picture of an African kid smiling. You go on Pixabay, they have free pictures you can just take, write something, and then you post it. It could be maybe you went to an event, you attended this BSA ambassador program today. It was inspiring. What are some of the things you learned? You take nice pictures, you post them. The things that are often posted will become the ones that get ranked by the algorithm. That's a whole different conversation. But the things that people post often will become what anybody else go online will be able to see. So simple actions like that can tell a very powerful story. Another thing you can take a time to do is create videos, or basically just go to, maybe you see something online and you decide, oh, this is about Africa. You can create a video about that, right? I use writing most, but you can create videos, or you could just go around on your phone and take nice pictures about Africa. Social media is powerful, and there are different mediums, different ways you can communicate using social media. And visual tools are very powerful, right? We can, like, you can take down the pictures that are on Google. But the problem is, one, they're expensive. Two, some of these pictures, it's not like all of them are false, but sometimes it's just one-sided story. So what we have to do is to balance the story by creating both. Every country have like a negative and a positive, right? Every continent does. So being able to balance out those stories will be very powerful. I hope I'm answering your question.
Yes, very well, ma'am. Thank you very much for that. Wonderful.
Great.
Thanks.
Thank you, Fatu. So Khadija, I see your hands up. We'll take one question after Khadija and then wrap up this session. So Khadija, you can go ahead.
Yeah. Yeah, okay. So my question, I don't know if it was explained, but I wanted to know how do one join, and if you join as an ambassador, the rules and what you have to do, how early should it start, and what any timeline, any specific things you have to follow or something. I just want to have an overview.
Okay, I think I'm going to take that question. So yes, it means that you are not part of the ambassadors, but you just joined because of some of the sessions. So thank you so much for joining. So there's a link to fill to be part of the ambassadors. So you fill that link. We have a little bio about you, and we are able to send you confirmation email. This comes along with some documents and some other timelines. And this was our first inaugural event to launch the ambassadorship and also take them through what it means to be an ambassador. So this will be rolling every quarter of the year. So this is the first one, and ending of December, that will be the first quarter for these ambassadors. And hopefully next year by this time, as an ambassador, we are looking at 1 year timeline for each ambassador. You can decide to leave or you can continuously stay, but we'll be renewing this every 1 year. But quarterly, we keep on onboarding more ambassador and taking you through this induction training over and over again. I hope I responded to your question. So if you register with the link, I'm going to put that in the chat and you can receive more information about the ambassadorship. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Betty, for your answer. Ribi, do you have another question? Because your hands are still raised.
Sorry.
Okay, so any more questions? One more question, and then we wrap up the session. Do we have any question from anyone? Okay. 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 We don't have any more questions. So we brought this event to a wrap, and I believe that, as I said at the beginning, that we've been empowered, we've been inspired, and we are looking forward to this journey as ambassadors of BISA. So to give us the closing remarks and to summarize the key takeaways from this event, I'd like us to invite once again Betty Osei-Bonsu. Betty, the floor is yours.
Okay, thank you very much, Shaira. And I want to use this platform to say a very big thank you to everyone that has joined today's calls, the ambassadors themselves and external public wanting to see what it looks like, especially when it comes to storytelling and public speaking. It's an opportunity for me to see this start from a seed, an idea, and now it's growing into a tree, it's growing into a movement. I always use myself to tell stories. I never knew that this is something that could become an organization. When I started my journey in community engagements and in the NGO sector, I was the only one who stood out whenever I'm called to present. What I do is that I start with a story. Ladies and gentlemen, 20 years ago, 50 years ago, and today it has brought us all here together. I'm hoping that this story is going to inspire every one of you. You're not doing this for me. You're doing this for yourself. I want to use the opportunity to say a very big thank you to my fabulous speakers, from Fatu, who delivered awesomely on storytelling, talking about her experiences in Canada, to her TED Talking abilities and how she had to use 40 minutes to prepare for 10-minute talk. I think that is so important because myself, every day, people call me the global trotter, right? I travel from one location to another, delivering public speaking and delivering speeches. And if I tell you how long it took me to prepare those speeches, you'll be surprised. But it talks about dedication, it talks about persistence. And that is one thing as a public speaker you have to develop. You have to rehearse. You have to rehearse. It's very important. And you have to develop some basic skills. Some of those basic skills are not just rehearsing, but preparing. There's a difference between rehearsing and preparing. When you are preparing to rehearse. In your preparation, there are lots of things you put in within those preparation. An example, now I'll shift to Mr. Evans. You can see when he was talking, he didn't do a lot of okay. He was straight to the point. He started with a beautiful entrance. He had all what he wanted to deliver. It means he has not only rehearsed, but he has prepared. He did an entire speech just talking, but it was almost like you were watching graphics in front of you. That is what a powerful speech should embody. And that is what we all should start emulating. We have to move away from being normal to being excellent. And that is what every day I try to tell myself and I try to tell the people around me. You're not just doing it for yourself. You're not just doing it for people, but you're also doing it for the world. A few years ago, 7 years back, I started my journey as a community engagement owner, project support assistant. That was how I started. And today I'm the country manager of the organization in a different country. I did not just get there that way, but I moved away being an employee to being a visioneer. And this is what every one of you should embody. Mr. Evans, thank you so much for that powerful presentation. It says a lot on public speaking and storytelling, and every one of you here should emulate this. We'll be having more of such sessions every quarter for the ambassadors. And as the previous speakers have said, and also Esther also mentioned, there is an entire program which will be sent to every one of you. You are encouraged to follow suit. You are encouraged to follow suit. On this note, I would like to say a very big thank you again. And don't forget to be inspired with stories from Africa. Yaira, over to you.
Thank you so much, Betsy. Indeed, don't forget to be inspired with stories from Africa.
I hope you are inspired because we are. Stay tuned and don't forget to subscribe to all our social media channels. It's displayed on the screen. And don't forget to press that notification bell to receive updates when they come by. It's Visa.